Let's go ahead and get started, everyone. 6:05. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Connects event tonight, an introduction to a career in sports and entertainment, branding as a minority to land the job. My name is Danielle, and I am the co-founder of the Connect. The Connect is a nonprofit organization which serves to educate, mentor, and help navigate minority high school and college students interested in pursuing a career in sports. Now, before I kick it off to our host and our moderator tonight, TJ Baker, just want to go over a couple of house rules here. Please, we want this chat to be as interactive as possible. So use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be sure to get to your questions throughout the chat here tonight. So without further ado, TJ, let's kick it off.
Cool. Thank you so much, Danny, for that and letting everybody know. Welcome to the Connect, ladies and gentlemen. This is your how-to. And listen, if you need some tools on how to navigate in this space and you want to get into the sports world, our illustrious guests, the panelists tonight, we're going to give you a little bit of insight into their world. And they're going to show you some things that, kind of help them get to where they are today. And listen, they got a lot of great things to share with you this evening. And make sure outside of this too, make sure you always look to connect with people and network as much as possible. But listen, we're on a time crunch, so without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and introduce our fine panelists for tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, she's a broadcast play-by-play specialist, everything from the Mystics and the Go-Go, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Megan McPeak. Hey, Megan.
Hi, TJ. Danny, thank you for having me. As TJ said, I am the voice of the Washington Mystics as well as the Capital City Go-Go. I also work on the Monumental Sports Network with the content and programming. So coming up with anything that has to do with any of the content that you happen to see on Monumental Sports Network, whether it's documentaries, shows, interviews, anything that you can see on that network, I have a hand in coming up with, as well as making sure that when you watch Mystics and Go-Go games, they're as fun and entertaining as possible.
Thank you, Megan. Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna stick with my lady. So she's an administrator, she's a manager, she's everything that comes with diversity, inclusion, and just making sure that outreach is definitely right. Formerly with Octagon, moving on to some bigger and better spaces, Miss Kiara Holroyd. Miss Kiara, say hi to the people.
Hello, and definitely not bigger and better. So big ups to Octagon. Loved working there. But as TJ mentioned, my name is Kiara Holroyd. I am the manager of inclusive diversity, currently at Danone, but recently left that position and was working at Octagon, where I worked across the entire Octagon Sports Entertainment Network. Everything from diversity partnerships to recruiting pipelines to D&I social and communications. So really happy to be with you here today and share some of my experience from the recruiting side, being in the trenches, helping people to get hired, and hopefully dropping some knowledge and helping y'all out.
Excellent. Thank you, Kiara. Appreciate it. Listen, they always say when you're from New York, if you can make it there, you can make it everywhere. And my man right here, the Harlem homeboy himself, is the president of Black Sports Professionals, the DC chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. CJ Simon. CJ, talk to him.
What's up, everybody? CJ Simmons. And I serve as president of Black Sports Professionals. Our goal is to connect people, all Black sports professionals in the DC area. So networking is one of our pillars. Our other pillar is educating the younger generation on careers in sports. And so working with Danielle and organizations like the Connect is something that we take very seriously. And the last pillar is highlighting our members and their successes throughout their career. So happy to be a part of this. Thank you for the warm welcome, TJ. Thank you, Danielle. Here to help.
Absolutely. Thank you, CJ. And my apologies to you. Listen, last but certainly not least, we're talking to an executive from Monumental Sports right there in our nation's capital. When it comes to people and culture, setting the tone in the organization, you need a guy like him. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vice President himself, John Ferguson. Talk to him, John.
Hello. Thank you for the warm and energetic introduction, TJ, Danielle, and the Connect crew. Thank you for having me. Definitely excited to be here this evening. Again, my name is John Ferguson. I hail from the big city of Greenville, South Carolina, but I've been in DC now for the past 10 years. As the Vice President of People and Culture, TJ hit the nail on the head. I'm dealing with all the people and the culture at Monumental Sports and Entertainment. My team and myself are responsible for the employee life cycle. So that includes your onboarding, offboarding, your engagement, the culture that you experience, benefits, payroll, everything that determines why you love your job and maybe why you don't like your job. But our goal there is to make sure that everyone feels welcomed and included within our walls. So thank you for having me and looking forward to the dialogue.
Excellent. All right, y'all. So listen, everybody sitting at home, all of our attendees, grab a pen. If you ain't old school like that, grab your phone, get your note app ready. Let's get to it. So listen, Megan, CJ, we're going to start it off with you guys. Let's talk about some of these barriers and things that may exist, some things that you did maybe during your collegiate career that prepped you, maybe some internships that you took, or maybe some people you watched to help you move and shake and kind of cultivate where you guys are. I'm going to go with our ladies first. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, so for myself, I grew up playing sports. I specifically played basketball up until I graduated college. And that, I think, if you play sports or do anything that's team oriented, it basically sets you up for anything in life, really, when it comes to whether you're doctor, athlete, lawyer, politician, if you run your own business. I think working in a team oriented and growing up that way, it helps prepare you for adulthood. Not just, working with other people, but as well to your confidence, how you speak with people, how you hold conversations. And for myself, it's kind of been something that I have been following and dealing with. I, had aspirations of playing overseas and playing professionally as a female athlete, but unfortunately, just with a really serious injury, my playing career was cut short. So, when I was in school taking radio broadcasting, originally from Toronto. So when I was in school, I was, preparing for life after playing. I wasn't thinking about, what am I going to do in a couple years from now? And I had to expedite that. And, playing sports prepared me for having to shift and move with different obstacles getting thrown at me. And, being a female in a predominantly male dominated role, it prepared me for that as well too, which is different because if you look at the NBA landscape and you look at the broadcasters in the NBA and the NBA G League specifically, because there's a lot of females on the women's side in the W, because that's quote unquote appropriate and acceptable in society when it comes to sports. I am the first and I am the only play-by-play voice that is a female in the NBA umbrella, and I am one of, I believe, 6 Black male or female play-by-play voices in the NBA and NBA G League, which is predominantly over 70% Black male, which is disappointing. But, dealing with that and being the first and the only right now within the NBA and that umbrella, it just tells me that there's work that I need to do. I look at women like Robin Roberts, Doris Burke, Hannah Storm. They came before me and paved the way to make me be able to do my job and put me in a position that I can even be in this position. So if it wasn't for them and the women that came before them to help knock down the doors, I wouldn't be where I am today. So while I might be the first and the only, if I can take a saying from what we witnessed on Saturday with the first Black and South Asian vice president in the White House, I may be the first, but I'm not going to be the last. And that's very true. So if I have to be the one that, deals with the obstacles and the breaking barriers so that the next generation after me and those that come after me, whether I see them or not, whether it's past my time, it just means that I did my job and I played my role. Is it cool to make history? Yeah, of course. But I'm thinking about how that can affect the next generation, and playing sports, plays a role in that because it allows me to think about my team and who else is on my side and who's in my circle and who I have to think of. So I kind of attack my role now from that point guard mentality as well too.
Cool, definitely. CJ, let's hear your insight.
Yeah. So, you mentioned internships. So I went to grad school. I went to undergrad at Morehouse College, and then I went to grad school and got my master's in sports business at NYU. So while in grad school, I interned at the New York Mets, Madison Square Garden Company, Major League Baseball's Office of the Commissioner. And so those are my 3 internships. And then my first job out of grad school, I worked with the New York Yankees. And in each of those areas, it was something that was difficult for me was blending in with my department and the organization. Like I was one of the only Black people, definitely probably the only in my department, but not seeing as much diversity across other departments as well. And that was a little bit difficult for me. Like TJ said earlier, being originally from Harlem, I'm around, a lot of minority groups. I went to Morehouse College. I mean, it's a, HBCU. So like I've grown up and been around a lot of people that look like me and stuff in general. And even jobs that I had from undergrad, I mean, it wasn't necessarily full of minorities, but just being in sports and like something that I felt passionate about, it was just something that I felt was missing, because you see that on the field or on, the court or things like that. And so it just really didn't make me feel as comfortable. And so that's kind of how Black Sports Professionals is kind of where it is today. It just was like something where I'm seeing different people, maybe from afar, that, might work for a team and that I might be connected with, but I don't know them, or even people in our own market. DC, we're close. We have all of these teams, and the NFLPA is here and all of these different things, but like, I don't know people. I never have a chance to cross paths with these people unless, we're making an effort to do that. So that was something that I wanted to do. And about last year, just sending out, emails to different people at different teams. John Ferguson was one of the people that was there at the meeting, and we just got together like, hey, look, we're here, we're all probably in our own silos, in our departments or in our jobs, in our companies. Let's find a way that we could get together, network with one another. And then, at that point, the sports world becomes even smaller. And now that we're connected and doing different things, we help one another out. I mean, I mentioned Danielle and what they're doing with the Connect and all of these things. And I knew Danielle from Monumental days. And so now you can see like the spread of, not only are we in sports, not only are we here and we have other people here to help us, but we're connected and we're unified. And I think that's something that's important.
Hey, CJ, bro, we want to help some people in terms of introducing them to the career. So let me ask this back to you, and maybe in a 1 or 2 minute thing, you can toss it back to me with your answer. But whether you talk about some of the prolific, teams and organizations, you're talking about the Mets, and that's in a big market. For somebody like me, I was at the right place at the right time when I got my first hosting job with the Philadelphia 76ers. So if I'm new to this, how do I get in with a team or something like that to help? Because you talked about just briefly with your connections with John and Danielle, but for somebody who's fresh out the box or a sophomore in college, how do they take that step?
The way that I got the internship with the Mets literally is I was at NYU for school didn't even start yet. So there was this was the semester before I was about to start school. And they had all of these panelists, like top panelists, Mike Francesa, Rob Manfred, when he wasn't even commissioner at this point in time. They had about 15 people. So I ended up going. I was interested. I got into the school and I ended up going. And on the list, and one of the things that I tried to do, and everyone on here should have tried to do this as well, the guests, is look up who everybody is and kind of come prepared with, if we were at a conference, it's come prepared to talk to each of us with something, or at least one of the people. So one of the guys on the list, a gentleman by the name of Steve Greenberg, he is on the board for the Jackie Robinson Foundation. I was a Jackie Robinson Foundation scholar when I went to undergrad. So for me, it was like, okay, when I go up to him and talk to him, hey, I'm about to start NYU, in the spring. I'm a Jackie Robinson scholar, just kind of having some sort of connection to him to remember me and him to actually want to talk to me and not just come in just randomly. He was so excited to meet with me and talk to me that he was like, oh yeah, here's my card, let's talk. And I sent him an email. He's like, hey, come to my office and let's sit down and, we'll talk about all the things that you're interested in. And I told him all of my internships, and he has very deep connections. And one of the connections that I didn't know was he's also on the board for the New York Mets. And so when I was interested in telling him about different internships, one, I grew up as a Yankees fan, not as a Mets fan. So that was, in hearing him ask me, are you interested in working with the Mets? My internal and ignorant feeling was, hell no. I'm a Yankees fan. I don't want to work with the Mets. Are you serious? The Mets suck. But outwardly and being more mature and in grad school, it's like, hey, this doesn't matter. The goal is to get a job, an internship, right? The Mets are a professional sports team. They're, as you said, in a big market. This would be my first internship. This is a win. This is a win in the grand scheme of things. So it doesn't matter if it's a team that I like or don't like. If someone, you see all these players and they grow up liking a particular team, but if they get drafted by a team and they're making millions, it doesn't matter if this is their rival or not. They'll play for that team. And similarly for me, it was like, this is a potential opportunity. Anyway, long story short, he's the one that helped me kind of bridge the gap and help me get that internship. So what I would say is it's the networking, but it's also making sure you come correct when you want to meet someone, you know, in a particular field or in a particular area, like do your research beforehand, figure out how you could connect with them, and then go from there.
Solid. Appreciate it, CJ. That's what we needed to hear from you. Super dope. So I'm gonna kick this one off to my other executives that's on the panel, John and Kiera, and y'all can pick who goes first. But AI said it best when he talks about practice. So once you landed that super big interview that you know you're gonna get your foot in the door, what did you do to prep yourself to make sure you were in there, but also once you got in there, you secured the position?
Kiera, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think it's something that CJ just alluded to, which is really important, and it's preparation. So if we're talking about securing that first interview, and I think that, just FYI, not enough attention is given to how to talk to a recruiter, because oftentimes as a recruiter, I was the first person. So I could get referrals from whoever, but you had to like talk to me and present yourself, because I have the due diligence of passing you along. So, you know, if you don't come correct during your conversation with me, I can't, you know what I'm saying? So I think once you get past that initial round, it really is about preparation. It's about knowing who it is that you're talking to. I am a big fan of LinkedIn research. Some might call it LinkedIn creeping, but I'm not above it. So, you know, looking at that person's profile, let's see, who else are they connected with? Are they connected with somebody that you know who might be able to give you a good reference or might give you some insider knowledge? But it's really about like research, both for the person, but also for the company. So you should know if it's a league, if it's a team, if it's a national governing body, if it's an arena, I don't care who it is, but you should know the ins and outs of that institution. You should know what's happening in their industry, what are their pain points, and then you should be able to tie that back to that particular job. So you should understand what's happening in the industry, and you should be able to say in no uncertain terms, this is how my job is going to align with whatever those pain points are, whatever those goals, objectives are. And here's what I'm going to bring to the table to alleviate that. And then I think it's also too understanding what the pain points and the challenges are for your particular role. So sometimes the role is open because somebody left. Sometimes the role is open because there's new business. Sometimes the role is open because the team is too small and they have to scale. There could be a myriad of reasons, but understanding why that particular position is open and what you're going to do for each one of your individual interviewers to make their job easier, I think is like the number one thing that people sort of forget, because when we're hiring, the whole point is that the team is going to be more efficient and that we're looking for somebody that's going to be able to just kind of jump in and then make that team operate a lot better. And then kind of finally, what I would say about it too, and this is something for the recent grads or for people who are just looking to get into the work field, but it could be for anybody. One of the things that DQs you almost instantly is to get on the phone or be across from somebody and say that you're just looking to get your foot in the door. Especially with sports, pun intended if you want, but the field is competitive. So you are not moving any needles by telling me that you are willing to do anything. So is everybody else. Tell me why you want this job. Tell me why you're going to be good at this job, and make it easy for me to see you in this job. I think it's totally fine to have the long-term view and know where you want to go 5 years from now, but really connect the dots. Because, and my final point before I pass it off to John is that the hiring process is long, it's grueling, it's hard on the hiring manager, it's hard on the recruiter. So if you can connect those dots as succinctly as possible and really make people understand why you're the right fit versus somebody else, you're that much closer to landing that opportunity.
I want to echo everything that that Kiara said, and I will also add some of the soft skills. You need to be prepared to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because everyone gets nervous for interviews. On this panel, who has been nervous before an interview? I would imagine all of us have been nervous. So with that, these are some of the basic tips that I like to incorporate. Look, you got the interview call, you probably instantly get nervous. I'm going to tell you to practice. Get Google interview questions and start practicing. You should have some canned responses that you are just ready to roll off your tongue. You should know about the organization as well. I'm also going to say, before you get to that interview, before you get out of your car or before you leave your house, put on your favorite song and do your favorite dance. You got to shake the jitters off. I want you to shake those jitters off. That's essentially getting rid of the nervous energy. Then once you get on that complex or that corporation's facility, know that you are interviewing from the soon as you set foot. I don't care if it's a security guard, a receptionist, someone in housekeeping, you are interviewing. If you ever come into an interview with me, you're going to sit in our lobby for a second before we're able to come out and grab you. But I'm definitely going to ask the receptionist, what was their engagement with you? Did you come in? Were you just head down on your phone? Did you come in and say, hey, how are you today? My name is John Ferguson. I'm here to meet with X. How long have you worked here? Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Like, did you engage them? And then secondly, when you get back to that interview location or on the way to that interview location, guess what? Have small talk ready. A couple easy questions to throw out there. The weather. I would also say traffic. Any little thing that's sort of relevant to what's happening right now, because that can be a long walk, but this could be the difference between you getting the job and you not getting the job. Once you get into that space when you're sitting down for your interview, I want you to create a cheat sheet. And that cheat sheet is going to have everything that you want to make sure that you say, no matter what questions are asked. Because I don't know about you, but I've left interviews and said, oh, I forgot to talk about this one valuable point that I wanted to sort of bring up. So you know your resume. You don't need to have your resume there to read it. You know it. It's your experience. But I want you to have that cheat sheet. And that cheat sheet is talking about either stories or how you can add value. But it's also tying it back to the job description. And then finally, in wrapping up a bit, you cannot be a passive candidate trying to work in sports. It is competitive. Kiara hit the nail on the head. It's very competitive. So leverage your LinkedIn network, leverage any network. If you know somebody that works for that company, you should reach out to them to see if they can get in contact with who they know on your behalf, because you won't believe how much of that happens in the background and how much it can influence the decision. And then lastly, I want to say, make sure you talk about how you can add value, but most importantly, bring something that makes you stand out in this process. So I always like to call it your Beyonce fan. If you've ever seen Beyonce in concert or anything that she does it to the highest standard. But if she's performing live, she has a fan. Her hair is blowing in the wind. So what is your Beyonce fan? What is the thing that makes you stand out? When I've heard the same 20 responses, what will allow you to stand out? So if you're a graphic designer, I fully expect for you to come in with a portfolio. Maybe you can have it printed. Maybe you could have done a mock-up for the position that you're going into. Or maybe you come in with a 30, 60, 90-day business plan. Or if you want to be in PR communications, you come in with writing samples. You come in with something that you can physically leave behind that allows you to stand out once the phone screens are done, once 20 interviews are done. Because when I was back in my recruiter days, after you talk to 30 people, they all kind of blur. So you got to figure out, how do I allow myself to stand out? And another way you can do that goes back to understanding who you're meeting with. The people that come into the space and say, oh, in preparation for the interview today, I saw that you went to Furman. That's where I went to undergrad. And they say, oh, I have a classmate from high school that went to Furman. So now we've had some small talk. So guess what? I may not remember everything, but I remember you were the person that mentioned Furman. And you had a classmate that went to Furman. So you want to try to figure out how you can make connections to people that allow you to stand out at the end of the interview.
Can I just add one thing? Because I
No,
love
you
the.
can't.
No, I'm going to do it anyway. So just be prepared for that.
Absolutely.
John, I love the practical advice. I think so often we give this like high level overview. One thing that you said about helping people to remember you. So yes, absolutely. After 30 candidates, and we will see 30 candidates, people will start to blur together. But one way that you can help yourself stand out also is by writing a thank you note. And it needs to be 24 hours after that interview. It can be an email. Don't forget about the handwritten note, like with the postal service these days, forget it. But send a quick email, and the email should be a really simple format. Make sure you put something to distinguish yourself in the subject line. Your opening is a thank you for meeting with me about the position. Your second line is something to the effect of why you're going to be an excellent fit for that position. Your third line is closing it out, and it's saying, you know, your contact information if you have any further questions. I can't tell you how many times the decision has come down to 2 candidates and the hiring manager goes with the candidate that wrote the thank you note. And then while you're doing that, definitely do not copy paste. You want to
Yes.
you want to personalize that, because also hiring managers will take your email and they'll be like, oh, did John write you a thank you email? What did he write to you? And then they're comparing your thank you emails between the two. So you don't want to get caught up sending the same exact thank you email to both people. So to John's point about like going to Furman or something that you were able to bond with the interviewer over, you know, put a personal touch in there so that they have that automatic recall, but would absolutely suggest or highly recommend, you know, putting that thank you note in once you're done meeting with people.
TJ, can I tag something on the end of that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
To John's point, I have actually, when I've gotten prepared for interviews, I have a friend interview me.
Mhm.
I send them the like description of the job that's, you know, they're looking for, so that they have the requirements and the responsibilities and whatnot. And I purposely have them come up with questions, and we do a Zoom call, FaceTime, whatever it may be, and have them like treat me like I'm interviewing for the job. And they make notes, and then we talk about it afterwards. And that, I can't tell you, when I actually was interviewing for my role here in DC, I did that, and it made me feel so much more comfortable going into that interview because I had prepared myself. I had gone through a mock interview. And the other thing too is take a notebook with you to make notes. But to John's point and Kiera's point with the cheat sheet, on the when you open your notebook, on the left side have your cheat sheet, and on the right side, that's where you make your notes, so that you can, if you need to, you can, you know, fake cough, look down, see what you want to say about that question, and then keep it going. But don't fake cough every single time, because then they're going to catch on.
Now is that a is that a which don't even worry about that, Megan. Don't even
I
worry
mean,
about
it's more like a excuse me.
it. Okay.
That way, you say excuse me. You know,
There you go.
you have to put your head down, but then also too, don't shake their hand with that cough hand.
Nah, that's the DAP after that.
So you gotta whatever hand you write with, use the opposite one. That way you shake with your dominant hand.
One thing I'll add there is so you can always know that it's a good interview. If you leave that interview and it felt like a conversation, it wasn't this rigid back and forth. If it was just flowing, then you look up, we're out of time, and they're just like, look, we got to wrap up, so we don't have more time to connect. You should leave with your head high. You made that easy for yourself and for the interviewer too. So those are always generally good signs when you walk out of the interview where it just sort of lingers, but it felt just like a dialogue between two people that have known each other.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, listen, thank you to all of our new attendees that just jumped on. You're live with the Connect. This is an introduction to career in sports with an illustrious guest of panelists. Listen, if you don't got a pen or a pad, get one, get your phone ready, and we're going to continue to go into some topics for this evening. Now, listen, to our panelists, I'm comfortable in the uncomfortableness of conversation. So I'm going to toss this one like this. This past summer has been one summer that we've probably never seen in our country's history, with a lot of racial issues, a lot of things that have made people uncomfortable, even into the heated election that we just witnessed. Throughout your career, I'm sure you had issues with it deals with your melanin. So let's talk about, you know, when you've seen issues like that, how did you deal with it? How did you persevere? How did you look at it? How did it mold you? How did it shape you? And then how did it set you up for either another interview, another job, or whatever the case may be? But let's talk about it. CJ, you've been kind of quiet for a while, so I'm gonna kick it off to you first, and then everybody else can just get a chime in. CJ, what you got for me?
I think,
Hey, CJ, we being honest, man. Come on, stop with the PC, bro. Let's get to it.
I just want to, make sure I'm wording this correctly. It's like, at times you might see certain things that, I think one thing you look at is like career advancement, right? Like, and I think that's an area that you want to see, all Black people succeed in that area. But you look at it for yourself, and like, at times you might see difficulty in doing that. And so in that regard, it's like figuring out a game plan of how do you proceed with that. And so, one of those things in which I did, and, John has, been a mentor to me in this regard, is just talking to someone who has more experience than you and trying to understand how to navigate in this landscape. Because, many times you might have your review and certain things like that, and you might not hear back what you feel is true or like what you wanted to hear. And your initial response is, man, this is crazy. Like, I'm mad, I'm upset, and like, why is this? And all of those different reasons. But it's just being angry and just lashing out isn't going to help you lead to that area of success. Like, you have to figure out the way to navigate that, in total. So finding areas, one of the things I think that's been mentioned multiple times throughout is like taking notes, taking notes and having that ready for an interview, taking notes and having that ready for your review session, writing down things that you've done, having tangible things that you could have in certain situations, so it's not just one thing to feel a certain type of way or, struggle with something. It's like looking at ways that you could have tangible results, talk to people who can be mentors to you or know more than you, and then find that way to kind of proceed and, go forward from there.
One thing I think that's an echo and what CJ was saying is, well, we have to be our biggest advocate. And with that, I want to make sure that people understand that we as individuals, no matter who we are responsible for our professional development. I think a lot of times I see junior professionals come in or entry level, and they are still perfecting the art of speaking up for themselves. They are still perfecting the art of using their voice in a room where they may be the most junior, or they may be the only person of color, or they may be whatever the case is, they may be the only. And that takes time. So I say, come in, learn the room, observe who has control here, what are the dynamics, but learn how to lean into using your voice. And that can happen a number of ways. It could be in that room, or it could be before you go into that room. A lot of times there's conversations before the meeting and there's conversations after the meeting. So start dialing into where those decisions are being made and how you can best leverage your own personality into that space. And then next, when we look at professional development, I encourage everyone to also take charge of that. So closed mouths don't get fed. So you need to ask for what you want, but also be willing to work for what you want. Don't expect someone to just hand you this promotion or hand you this opportunity. You should be keeping your head on the swivel to understand what types of opportunities are available. And then I'd also say consistently ask for feedback. You shouldn't get to that performance review time, whether it's annual or biannual or 4 times a year. You should always be asking after you've done some sort of substantial work product or turned something in. What feedback do you have for me here? And you may have some managers. Guess what? Not all managers are good at giving feedback or comfortable in doing it. So I make it easy for them. I say, well, if they're like, well, it was good. I'm like, well, no, I really want to get like, what's one thing I could have done differently? So I say, well, what can I start doing? What can I stop doing? And what can I continue doing? So then I'm asking them to recall maybe something they learned in their experience that maybe I haven't crossed that road yet, but what can I proactively be working towards to manage better just based on what I have experienced to and exposure to, or also tied into where do you see me going with this organization? And then next, I wanted to sort of say, I read an article recently or a couple of years ago now, but it really stood out to me. Typically Black people have heard the narrative, we have to work twice as hard. While I want us to continue to work hard and be excellent, I also want us to know that sometimes certain environments are not, they're not for us to thrive. So the visual here is there's a 3-foot house. This house is built for 3-foot people, but guess what? We're all 4 feet tall. So we can get into that house and we can maneuver for a while because it's okay to kind of crouch down. But after a while, my back starts to hurt, my legs start to hurt, and I want to stand up because I want to be myself. And then that's when I recognized that house was not built for me. So maybe when I start getting no's and doors are not opening for me, versus for me to keep knocking on a door that's never going to open or give me what I want, let's pivot and make sure we have our exit strategy. Let's invest in what do we want to get out of this opportunity. If you've given me the no, or you're not allowing me to progress in a manner in which I think I am ready for, let's not just sit there and be complacent. Let's say, okay, let me read the room. Let me see what needs to happen here. What can I take from this place to get me to where I need to go next? It's because sometimes you have to go to grow. So I really believe in that. And that takes time and experience to get to that level of sort of maturity in the workspace and also in your professional development. But I'm a person, I don't like rejection. I think anyone who probably works in sports doesn't like rejection because we're competitive to a degree. And so I say that sometimes go to grow is fine. So always keep your head on the swivel, know what value you add to the organization, learn all that you can. And then if it comes to a crossroad where you realize it's time for me to go because this ladder has stopped, that's okay. Go to grow.
So for my ladies, this is going to be insightful for you all to help some young ladies out here, because we also know, unfortunately, with women, it's a little bit different as well. So women with melanin, how does that work? Ladies, take it away. Whoever want to go first, jump on in.
I'll start, and then and Megan, you feel free. This could be a dialogue. There's a lot that goes into it. So there's numerous studies that have been shown that Black women in particular tend to index around the most ambitious. Shout out to Kamala Harris, we want to run the country. We're ready for it. We want to do it. And then you kind of turn around and there could be a variety of reasons why you're not growing the way that you want to, or your career just feels like it's stalled in a particular point. So, I mean, does your melanin play a factor in that? Absolutely. Again, there's lots of data out there that points to the fact that Black women and women of color are the most likely to be misunderstood, to be characterized as aggressive when we're giving direct feedback. And we get feedback on things that men, quite frankly, don't have to worry about. So our facial expressions, our hair, the way that we dress, and all of that stuff just kind of, it bombards you, and you're just like, yo, this is all the way left, and I know this is not right. But how do I continue to grow and to thrive? Because you might have that ambition, and you might know where it is that you want to go. What I have found to be particularly impactful for me in my career have been a couple of things. First is the differentiation between having a mentor and a sponsor. So I know a lot of people talk about mentorship, and they think that a sponsor is the same thing. I'm here to tell you that it is not. A mentor is somebody, to CJ's point, that has spent a little bit more time in the game than you have and can help you navigate. So think about your mentor as somebody has just told you, Megan, that your head wrap is not professional. And you're like, I got to close the door. We got to have a conversation.
Just as it was getting good. Did she freeze up on your end?
I think she froze up a little bit. Megan, I'm gonna let that was the tag in. Megan, that's the tag.
I think I know where she was going with this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because to her point with my head wrap, like I've been asked, why do you dress that way? Why do you dress like a tomboy? You need to wear more makeup. You don't wear enough makeup. Why do you wear your hair like that? You shouldn't have your hair in braids. You shouldn't have your hair out curly. You should have your hair straight. And for women in sports, especially Black women, Latino women, minority women, period, the moment we step into a room, we are looked at from how we look and not what we know. Immediately, that's the way we're judged. And men don't have to deal with that. And it just doesn't make sense as to why we have to like worry about our appearance before we have to worry about our knowledge. Because there's conversations that I have had with men, especially about sports, and I have purposely, more recently, probably in the last like 5 years, I have been in situations where I'll allow the conversation to happen and I just sit and observe. And then, someone decides that they're going to get smart and make a comment about me being a female in the conversation of sports. And I then, I'll play along with it. And I just, joke around and kind of treat it like, in my head, I know where this is going, but they don't know where I'm about to take this. And typically it ends up with me talking circles about sports around them and them looking like fools. Point blank, period. And they made that judgment simply because of how I looked. And it never makes sense to me. So when it comes to women in sports, we are always judged by how we look. We are not taken seriously when we may know more than some people. We don't get to talk about sports because we didn't maybe play, yet there is countless men who are writers, reporters, analysts who haven't played the game either. And it's that double standard, and it doesn't make sense. And sometimes it's frustrating too, because fans will then get on you. When I was previously at my old job, I actually had a social media situation where a fan, and sadly enough, he was a Black male, and this stemmed from me being stuck on the side of the road with a flat tire. And I just went to Twitter and was just like, tweeting through the situation and just blowing off steam, because I had to wait for 45 minutes to an hour for a tow truck. So I was like, it's Sunday, I'm bored. Let me just, fire off some tweets. And he got mad because I didn't respond to him, but he didn't tag me. So I would have never seen the tweet anyways. And he proceeded to then verbally attack me and actually threaten me. So it became a bigger situation than it needed to be. Luckily, though, I had, an organization behind me that handled it. But that all stemmed from the simple fact of me being a female in sports and not responding to a man. I affected his ego because he didn't get a response. First of all, learn how to use social media by tagging people. Hello. Second of all, don't get in your feelings because I didn't respond to you. Even if you did tag me, there's no rhyme, reason, or rule that says I need to respond to every single person on social media. And there's no rhyme, reason, or rule that says I need to look a certain way, I need to dress a certain way, I need to wear my hair a certain way, whatever it may be. It doesn't make sense why women have to deal with that, and then Black women. So, when Kiera's saying, and John had said, Black women always have to work, Black people have to work twice as hard. Black women have to work 4 times as hard to prove ourselves. And I always say this, and I'll continue to always say this. Black women are the last thought, but the first to the fight. And we saw that in a VP winning in an election. Black women came out in droves. Minority women came out in droves and put a Black, South Asian, Jamaican woman in the White House along with Joe Biden. Like, Black women did that. Black women changed the course of an election. And yet we are last of thought and first to the fight.
Whew, so I'm supposed to keep moderating after that. Figure this out.
That was a good one.
Megan, that was amazing. Go ahead, Kiera, since you back now.
I'm
Kiera,
back now. Listen, I'm gonna
good.
go on record and say that home Wi-Fi is not the same as office Wi-Fi. It is not. It's not the same.
Oh, it's no problem. Listen, we called the rescue team for you, so make sure you're good. Go ahead, tell us what you got.
I appreciate that. So, no, Megan, everything you said, I echo it. I have seen it. I have heard it. I have been told that I was too aggressive. I've had comments about my appearance. I have also had to flex my sports knowledge in ways that I'm like, why are we even here talking about this right now? Like, why is that important? And the point that I was going to make is the sponsor versus the mentor. And what I was saying is the mentor is going to be the person where you're going to close the door and you're going to tell them about a conversation that went all the way left. And they're going to help you navigate that and unpack it so that you don't ruin your career with an ill-timed email. Because I've been close with the fingers. I've been ready to tell somebody and it's like, hold on. That's not the way we want to go. Your sponsor is an executive and they can look like you. They don't have to. I would suggest that your mentor looks like you or has a similar background because that's somebody that's going to know your struggle. But your sponsor, is going to be that executive that makes sure that your name is being spoken in rooms that you're not in yet. And I would say that for any type of career advancement, you need somebody like that because they're going to cut through all of the noise, the unnecessary noise that your melanin creates that it shouldn't, right? So we should be looked at for our capabilities and not for our color. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But what your sponsor can do is be in the room. And when stretch assignments are being discussed, when promotions are being discussed, anything, they're just mentioning you over and over again. They're saying, you know who's going to be great for that? Megan's going to be good for that position. Do you know about what Megan just did? Megan. And you need somebody to go before you, sort of to be your herald, to be your champion, because then they're going to put you in a position where you can do that for the next person. So I would absolutely, yes, we have to work 3, 4, 5 times as hard, but definitely don't discount like having that village of people that are going to be able to support you, whether that's for you to rant, or that's to help you get the key positions that are going to advance your career.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Kiera. Thank you, ladies, as well. That's very poignant of you all. So listen, we're going to continue to propel the conversation, but to all of our attendees this evening, if you got a question for our panelists, put it in the Q&A. We want to hear from you guys. So make sure you got something, you can either put it as a general question or something directly to one of our panelists this evening so that they can address it. We got you. It's no problem at all. All right. So listen, you guys are all brands and entities yourselves, and everybody who's watching is seeing you guys flourish through all your career paths. So how did you start becoming a brand yourself in your particular role? So how did it start? Where did the foundation come? How have you currently lamented it in your current roles? And how do you forecast it for the future as you continue to move around as, broadcasting and also as executives and administrators in your own right? So, John, I want you to go ahead and go first if you don't mind.
I would say I'm a natural extrovert. So I think the biggest sort of, I like to say my secret power is that I have the ability to connect with people in very cold settings. We could just be first engagement. I can generally walk into a space, try to make it lighter, try to build a connection with people. So I think that's one of the things that I would say is sort of a superpower. And I think I'm able to do that in a genuine way. And so I encourage you to figure out what that is. And I've used that to leverage my brand. Another thing is that I'm a straight shooter as an HR professional. I will be first to tell someone that comes to my office, like, look, how can I help you lead to grow? Because look, based on the conversations that we keep having, this formula just isn't working. And let's not keep trying to make this singular formula work when there are 3 others that will work if you turn right. So I believe in that because I want to see I think the biggest reward for me working at HR is seeing people get to where they want to be. And if that means outside of our organization, I'm happy to champion for you. I'm happy to leverage my network. I'm happy to make a call on your behalf. Or if that's internally, who do I need to talk to? Because there have been many times where I may be in a conversation with someone where decisions are being made and I can make a statement. I can do an alley-oop to somebody. I can be that sponsor for someone who may not be in the room, who may not be top of mind, but I can tell you about my experience with that individual and the value that they've added to me. The next thing I want to say is make sure that in building your brand, that you also keep an eye on the big picture. I think that when we come into the workplace, sometimes we come in just head down and want to work really hard in this singular role or scope. But I want us to not lose that sort of social currency because it's very important. You want to make sure that people know who you are. You want to make sure that you're visible, that you're building relationships outside of your immediate department, because that goes a long way. Anytime there's an opportunity to be on a cross-departmental team, sign up for it, raise your hand. And you never know what you can learn from someone else, but also in that same token, make sure you know the people that look like you. Make sure you know them. Because it's all about that internal network. You never know. Maybe I want to pivot into what Megan is doing or pivot into what CJ is doing. If they're leaving that role, they would be the best person to recommend me for their as their replacement. And then last, I think I would add, be ethical in all that you do. And I think the next thing I would say is leverage emotional intelligence. If I could give this group, who I believe are college students, high school students, recent college grads, emotional intelligence. Start learning and reading up on that now. Essentially, it boils down to how I manage myself and how I manage others. Being able to really sort of control a space really boils down to controlling your emotions. You may hear something that just lights you up, but in how you respond to that can really set the tone and set a trajectory for your career that could that could really take you to the top. Because I feel like when we see most of the CEOs and the corporate leaders, typically there was a level of emotional intelligence, them being able to build relationships, navigate people, maneuver people as they should to get to where they wanted to be or the outcome that they desired. That's key. So I tell you, if I don't say anything else today, make sure you start looking into that where you are now, because if you get a head start faster than I did in managing that aspect of myself and my career and the people that I work with, the sky's the limit.
To anybody else who wants to add that, if we can kind of encapsulate that in 1 or 2 minutes, because the Q&A is starting to populate. So talk about brands, but give yourself about a minute or so to just go into it. Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, I think John, you hit so many points, and it's tough to follow up with that. But I think one of the things that I tried to do, I guess, speaking of people that are in college, when I was in grad school, my thing was I wanted to finish grad school and land a job at a top sports professional team. That was my goal. And so how do I go about doing that? And so I talked about just getting an internship somewhere. I have to get something on my resume. And so what that is, the first internship that I wanted to work at MSG. grew up as a big Knicks fan. I wanted to, like, that was just the ideal position that I wanted. And I applied for that internship and did not get it. And so what I did is I got the internship at the Mets. And so I leveraged that as like, okay, I failed this time, but now I have an internship. Like I said, it's still a professional sports team. What could I do here to then come back in the fall to try to go back and get that internship again? I was working in corporate partnerships. So then I just doing research, like, okay, Delta is a corporate partner of the Mets. Delta is a corporate partner of MSG. If I could work with Delta and have that connection, we're in the same market, you know, it's big, you know, New York area, things like that, still sports. How could I do that? So I worked at the Delta, like, you know, silo at the Mets. And then when the following semester came in the fall, I was the first one to get the internship at MSG. And so continuing that, I continued to develop my story. How could I, you know, go through each of these internships, developing myself? So the first one was like, I worked in baseball. You know, I worked at an outdoor facility. That was kind of what I did, and kind of understanding activations and how they work with rain and dealing with weather and things like that. Then I'm at MSG, a multi-use facility. You know, I'm dealing with hockey, I'm dealing with basketball. So that's adding to my story. Those are all things that's adding to my brand. One of the things that John said is, you know, using your network. So what I would do after each internship is talk to the people that I networked there and let them know what my following internship was. Hey, I'm at the Mets. Hey, just let you guys know, I'm going to be interning at MSG in the fall. Do you know anybody that works there? You know, I'm working in corporate partnerships. This is the same sort of department. If you do, can you connect me with someone? So then when I go there, not only am I going in like having a person to reach out to and talk to, that's kind of setting my connections and broadening my scope of the people there. So I would always continue to do that. So then from there, like working at the teams, then I got the MLB Office of the Commissioner position. But my point from there was like, hey, look, I worked in these different areas. I worked in the micro level. Now I'm working on the macro level, looking at the league, you know, on a holistic basis, not just with the team. So now I'm worried about things like the All-Star game and playoffs and things like that, not just the success of a team. So each step was me further developing my story. And so, you know, although I didn't get one of the internships that I wanted, I still took another path in order to go a roundabout way. So continue trying to tell your story, work on your brand. Obviously, all the things of being a hard worker, you know, doing networking, doing those things are important, but trying to figure out how to leverage your story through, you know, your resume is important as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ladies, let's talk about that brand. Once again, if we can kind of streamline it, because I want to make sure I get to these questions because everybody wants to know some things about you guys as well. So either Megan or Kiera, which one of you guys want to go talk about your brand real quick?
I'll jump in real quick. I don't have too much to add to what John and CJ have said. I think that they've made a bunch of salient points. The one thing that I would say, though, is always pursue whatever it is with authenticity. So at any point, you're going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted to streamline something, chop it off a little bit, smooth it out, because you want to fit. And if there is one thing that I could just tell everybody, and one thing that I wish more people knew, is that diversity is such a big deal in sports and entertainment right now. It's a big deal everywhere, but it's a really big deal in sports and entertainment. These organizations are falling all over themselves to find diverse talent. And what makes you unique is the fact that you understand this market inside and out. You're from it, you're of it. So especially as a minority, like, don't be afraid to lean into that, to have a unique positioning off of that, and don't smooth too many of your edges out. I think that when you do that, you sort of lose something that makes you unique, something that makes you competitive. Not to mention, you can't keep that up for very long. So you're going to force fit yourself into spaces that you never really were meant to belong in. And then you can't really expand in those places. You're not able to participate at the fullest extent of your capabilities if you're trying so hard just to fit in. So when you're coming up with your brand, I would say keep it as close to your personal self as possible. There shouldn't really be two completely different versions of you. for example, I'm a nerd. I'm always going to be a nerd. I'm always going to be the person that is like up to date on Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, self-professed Slytherin here. So like, I'm going to bring that with me everywhere. I'm a vegan, I farm. So like, there's going to be no point in my career where I'm going to go somewhere where that's not accepted, valued, where my perspective isn't sought out specifically because of that. And I think that's what makes you even more competitive when you're able to bring those aspects of yourself to something. So definitely, as you're creating your brand, stay authentic to yourself, stay true to yourself. Don't smooth out too many of those edges because you want to stand out. You want to be competitive in that way.
Definitely. Shout out to all my fly nerds in here attending tonight. We love our fly nerds. I be your authentic self. Megan, come on, man. Chime in with a little something about brands because you got a heavy one. Come on, sis. What you got for us?
I'll keep it short because I know you want to get to the questions. I mean, to Kiera's point, the authenticity, like if you go on my social media, you're not going to see me like doing too much. I'm not posting daily. I'm not like flooding the timelines. I'm very strategic with what I post and what I'm saying, because at the end of the day, jobs and, you know, college grads, college students, high school students, we look at what you tweet. We do. It's not a myth. It is a fact. John will tell you, Kiera will tell you, CJ will tell you, TJ will tell you, Danielle and her team will tell you. We look at what you tweet. We look at what you post. If you are private, there are ways to find out what you're posting. Don't worry, they can find it. So be very diligent and be very careful with what you're posting, because even when you delete something, guess what? It's the internet. It comes back to haunt you. And it will come back to haunt you. If you think it's gone, it isn't. So the authenticity factor is so important, because if you're yourself on your social networks, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you're using, if you're yourself, you don't have to worry about something that you post or that you said coming back to, you know, prevent you from getting a job. It doesn't mean that you have to always be talking about sports. If you want to work in sports, you don't have to consistently be talking about the games that are happening and what's going on in, you know, the baseball trade deadline or the hockey trade deadline. You don't have to consistently always be talking about that. You can talk about life things, but being authentic and being true to yourself is very important, because, you know, employers, as I said, they'll look at that and they'll try to tie it in. I've actually had an employer ask me about things I've tweeted about. I've had employers ask me, okay, this is the climate right now. How are you going to handle it if someone says this, you know, A, B, and C to you? What are you going to say? How integral do you want to be in this conversation with what's going on in the country right now? So the more authentic you are of yourself, the easier it's going to be for you to answer those questions and have those conversations with potential employers and hiring managers and hiring recruiters.
Absolutely. Hey, Megan, I'll chime in with one of my teams and organizations. I was actually called to the carpet one time about a like that I shared with. And so she's absolutely right, guys. So if you're on the feed watching tonight, you just got to be careful when you play the social game. All right, that was great. Let's go into these questions because we got some great ones. And I know, John, you got to, you know, roll out very soon. But this first one, I really want to slide to you and also Megan. So from our Q&A panel, it says, great insight by all the panelists tonight. Thank you for taking time to share your knowledge with us all. Do you think businesses will continue their investment in BLM or the Black Lives Movement? It's unfortunately what we see right now with sports and businesses adding funds so they don't want to be viewed as they don't care. I would love to see teams and businesses make it a core value so they help to force the change that we all want to see. So with John and Megan, you know, with your affiliations with teams and organizations and leagues, let's talk about that if you two don't mind. Then, you know, CJ and Kiera, you can jump in too. But John, I want to go with you first, and then Megan, if you don't mind, and then we can just keep it flowing.
I think organizations have a responsibility, especially if they ventured into the space of making a statement. I feel like you made that a statement. Now I can hold you accountable to that statement. I have to give major shout out to the NBA as a league. They made a statement. They have been driving messaging. They have been a driving force, and that driving force, that's how they can leverage their scope of influence. That pushed down to all their teams. I don't know what all teams would have naturally done on their own, but trust and believe the NBA says sort of this is the standard. And if you're going to be in our family, if you're going to be working with us, this is what we expect for you to contribute. Secondly, internal employees to those organizations, we have a responsibility to hold those organizations accountable. If you have said it, then I'm going to hold you to that expectation. Same with our own professional development. If someone has said A, B, and C, this is my job description, this is what they expect me to do. You made a statement into this space, I expect you to hold true to that statement. So I think we all play a part inside and outside of an organization to hold them accountable for whatever they have put out there. And one thing before I head out, someone mentioned how do I transition into the industry or how do I get opportunities? A lot of us today have talked about internships. Internships are great, but guess what? They're limited. We might have 25 to 30 interns, but guess how many part-time seasonal staff we hire a season? Over 100, over 200. So there are more opportunities working part-time. And guess what the best people do? Get a part-time opportunity, get their foot in the door. Now they have FaceTime with executives across the organization, with the current interns. And guess what? When the interns leave, they're saying, hey, you should hire CJ. You should hire Megan. You should hire Kiera. She's on the game night staff. I practically showed her everything that I know. They would be the next best intern. So don't limit yourself to only looking for internships. Those part-time roles can be very powerful and can allow you A, to get an internship, or B, get a full-time job. I know several people that have been able to navigate that. So don't limit yourself to solely looking for internships, because there's more opportunity when you look at the part-time opportunities. But yes, we have every right to hold these companies accountable for what they've said, because guess what? It all comes down to money. And the prime example of that was the Washington football team. They had made a long statement that they would never change this team's name. But guess what? When it came down to that naming rights sponsor saying, look, we're going to walk away from this, no one else would want that tainted image. So they had no choice whether they wanted to or not, but they had to pivot in order to save that brand. So I believe in the power of the collective power of people. I believe in being unified, and we just need to hold people accountable. And I agree with that, with everything. And I trust and believe that a Black woman will help us get there.
Appreciate it, John. Megan, please.
Yeah, I think to John's point of accountability, that's huge. And it's not just, us as internal employees as well, too. It's the fans. The fans are gonna, to John's point, if you had a team that made a statement, team fans, they're passionate. I mean, TJ, Philly fans, it doesn't matter what sport it is. Philly fans, if you make a move with a Philly team, player, personnel that they don't like, you damn well know they're gonna let you know. So now you have this movement of racial injustice and social injustices happening in this country that have been happening for literally centuries, that have continued to happen and are at the forefront. And it is a generation of young people that are saying, the generation before me, they tried. Generation before them, they tried. But now this generation, my generation, we've had enough. Enough is enough. And they continue to make their voices be heard. And they will continue to hold not just sports teams and sports leagues, but they're going to just, simple companies, to Kiera's company, Danone, Deloitte, any company that has made a statement in support of what is going on and wanting it to end and wanting to be part of, a community, a coalition, whatever it may be, they're going to hold you accountable. So if you don't want to be held accountable, then you shouldn't have made that statement. But at the same time, too, if you're working for a company that didn't make a statement and you got some melanin in you, you might want to look at that company with a side eye and question what their motives are, and question what they're doing, and question if they value you, not just as an employee and as a number, but as a human. Because if you, as a company that you work for, if you look at them and they can't simply say that this is unjust and this is ridiculous and irresponsible, that it continues to happen and there is no consequences, then that might not be a company you should or want to be working for. Because do they value your life? If something were to happen to you, how do they value you? So you have to start moving forward with that. But it really and truly comes down to us holding companies accountable, but it also comes down to our allies that don't have the melanin in their skin. They also have to hold companies and people accountable as well, too, because as much as, the Black community and minorities want to step up and use our voices, we still need allies, because the allies, it works in numbers. We saw it again in an election. 74 plus million people changed who was in the White House because they had allies and were sick of what was going on. And that also comes into this situation with companies and the Black Lives Matter movement. And you know, a lot of people have an issue with the conglomerate that is Black Lives Matter. But at the same time, those three words don't always, you're not, when you say them, you're not always tying it to that that entity. You're simply just saying a Black life matters. It doesn't have to specifically tie into that group and what they do and what they stand for. It is simply just saying that my life matters, your life matters, Danielle's life matters, Kiera's life, CJ, and the countless people that might have melanin in their skin and their complexion that are joining us. Their lives matter just as much as the next person, and that's all we're trying to say, and that's all we will continue to say.
So CJ or Kiera, if you want to chime in before we get to some questions about, you know, how
I think Megan did an excellent job.
Megan said it. Megan said it. I got nothing to add.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, let's do this one, because this is one that's near and dear to my heart. Any advice for someone that is starting later in the sports industry, rather than someone who is getting into it right out of college, someone that has experience working in other similar industries? And Danny knows, for me to be where I'm at, like, this is my story. So I want to hear what you guys have to say. And for that person who asked that question, find me. I'll share it with you later. But definitely, panelists, what you guys got to say on that one?
I want to take that one because I definitely started in sports later and came to it from an affinity for entertainment, and like a love of sports, but not being of that world. I think the first thing that you have to recognize is that people are biased and they're busy. So there's two B's. I would say that people are lazy, but that's not nice. But biased and busy. So biased on the fact that, like, when I was doing hiring, a really big part of what I would have to coach hiring managers on would be like, what does diversity on your team look like? What are we looking for? This role is open. Again, what I was talking about before, this role is open because of X, Y, and Z. So what can we go into the market and look for? And a lot of times, especially if we're looking for like a hospitality position, the hiring manager will say, just give me somebody that was like in and around hospitality. I don't care if they worked for an arena. I don't care if they were part-time staff for game night. Just give me somebody from hospitality, right? So you go out, you look for that person that's from hospitality, and then, okay, boom, here's this background from hospitality. And the hiring manager's like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. So biased, busy, because they are worried that if they take a chance on somebody's background that does not come directly from the sports or entertainment industry, how much time do I have to now spend to get that person up to speed? And just to give a little bit of context, not too much, a lot of times in the back end of these positions, especially if it's for an agency, but it could be for a brand or wherever, you're losing money the longer that job is open. And you're losing valuable time. All of us are up against the clock, whether it's draft, game day, whatever it is, we have to like get it done. So the hiring manager is worried about getting you up to speed. So I'm busy. If I hire you and you don't know what you're doing right off the bat, how much time have I wasted? So maybe I'll just go with this other candidate. Your job then becomes, when you're transitioning into this space, I would say purely from a resume point of view, is to make it as easy as possible for both the recruiter and the hiring manager to look at your resume and say, oh, that's somebody that I could use. That's somebody that I could see and see. So there's really simple things that you could do with that. I always say you should have multiple versions of your resume. So you should, if you know that you want to be in hospitality, you want to be in integrated marketing, and you want to be, I don't know, doing something else within sports, you should have 3 different versions of your resume that speak specifically to that experience. That's number 1, 3 versions. The second thing is look at that job description. I'm not going to say copy the job description word for word, but there are going to be things in that job description that go directly along with what you have done. So, change the language up on your resume. So many times we're using applicant tracking systems that give you just some random score. And if your resume doesn't match up with that job description, you're going to get DQ'd just on the basis of a keyword search. So you don't want to have that happen. And then the last thing I would say too is, as you're trying to transition, And this was said before, so I won't go over it too much, but you do have to build up a network. So a lot of times we're getting people in who were referrals. Take a look at this person, look at Megan's background, look at CJ's background. They're super dope. Think of them for the next opportunity. And some of those referrals are coming from, quite honestly, pretty high up. So when your SVP of such and such is saying, I need you to look at this person, guess what? They're going to go to the top of pile. Is that fair? No. But like, maybe if you know the SVP of such and such, or somebody who knows somebody, they're going to be able to put in a good word on your behalf. So, there's definitely some ways to finesse networking. Certainly don't just go into it and hit people up because you're just looking for a job. But you do have to, manipulate your network, navigate it in a way so that you are top of mind, so that people do want to put you forward. And then your resume is sort of like the icing on the cake if you have parallel skills. And then finally, just be able to talk about them, be able to connect the dots for people. So again, they're busy. And if they're taking a chance on you, more than likely they're listening with a bias toward why you're not a fit rather than why you are. So your job then becomes to talk about your skill set in such a way that they can't deny it. So you want to have real, tangible examples of what you've done that directly fit into the job description, again, making it easy. So your whole job is to take yourself as a full package and make it as easy as possible for people to see you in that role, and connect those dots for folks.
I'll just jump in quickly.
Right,
my path was, I wanted to do what Kiera said. I wanted to, take my career and just kind of make that switch to a job in sports, but it just served as too difficult for me. I was reaching out and, I didn't know enough people. Like she said, I might know one person here or there, and my resume didn't, read right for the jobs that I wanted. And I just wasn't getting any looks or anybody, reaching back to me, which is why those things that I mentioned of going back to school to restart my resume and restart my career is something that, for me, is something that I decided to do. It doesn't have to necessarily be that you need to do that, but I felt like that was the best course for me. And it doesn't have to be going back to school for sports management or sports business degree. You could also go get your MBA and utilize that time, to find certain internships at certain places. I mean, the thing about sports, and I think this is a thing that, I don't think most people understand, is if you look at just a normal company, you look at somewhere like Coca-Cola, for example, sports as well, and the sports business side has many different departments similar to an organization like that. There's a marketing department, there's a legal department, there's, sales, there's all of these different finance, there's those areas at those companies as well. So if you get an internship, want to do marketing, you could do marketing at Coca-Cola or marketing at Pepsi or things like that. You can still be in their sports side. I mean, you see all these commercials that they have out there. The halftime show, from the NFL is from Pepsi, they sponsor that. So you could still have that experience to kind of help you bridge the gap. That was just something that I needed to do for my career. And it's something that, if you feel like that's necessary, just keep your eyes open to that. The only thing that I would add, the last thing that I would add is, if you do decide to do that, you have to humble yourself. And in sports, it's a very humbling experience all the way through. I think something that someone told me before was that there are a number of jobs that I received that I might not have been the best candidate. And I know in the reverse sense, there are jobs that I may have felt that I was the best candidate that I did not receive. You have to look at your career path as your own path. Everyone's path is different. How they got there, who helped them, timing, just that connection. John mentioned, someone mentioned, they know someone from Furman. That might have been the thing. You might not know someone from Furman. So that path for you, that connection might not be there at that time. So there's so many different things and so many different areas that are at play that you have to look at your own career and your path as your own. But the other thing is humbling yourself. All the internships that I mentioned to you guys, I mean, I was, folding tables and carrying tables and doing all types of stuff. I was working with people. I was working with interns that were in undergrad, and I'm in grad school doing this. I'm 28, 29 years old doing this stuff. And so what? But I mean, for me, this was a place that, like, it was a means to an end. I needed to do this in order to get to the place that I wanted to be. So I never looked down on this or myself or the people that I was working with is like, I'm too good for this. No, like I need to do this in order to get to my career path. So definitely humble yourself in sports in total, like in every area. It's definitely important.
Wonderful. That's solid. Real quick, I want to reach out. Hey, Danny, we got time for at least one more. One more is fine.
Yeah, definitely. Let's keep it moving.
Oh, we can keep going past one more.
We why not? You know, everyone has. I want the questions to be answered, so you know.
Okay.
Let's answer them.
All right, let's do it. So I'm gonna go down here to my guy Brandon because this is a really good one as well. It says thank you to everyone for taking time out of your day to be here tonight. I wanted to ask everyone how they go about talking and connecting with someone they work with a few levels higher than them, and how do they create those relationships, especially someone in a position that you want to be in one day. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a tough one. So I'm gonna put mute on my screen and let y'all have at it. Go ahead.
So for me, obviously, you know, being in the G League and the W, my aspirations is to work in the NBA. And I was actually doing an interview and was asked, you know, typical same question that everybody gets asked, and you actually will get asked this in some job interviews, is like, what's your goals? What's your goals in 5 years? What's your goals in 10 years? And I told the person that was interviewing me, I was like, I want Mike Breen's job. Anybody who knows Mike Breen, I don't want his Knicks job. Sorry, CJ. I'm good. That might be exhausting. But I want his job as the voice of the NBA Finals. I want that on my resume. Fast forward, Mike Breen found out about it. And it was actually in March, right before everything was shut down with the COVID test in the Utah Jazz game. Wizards were playing the Knicks a couple days before it. They were in town, and he came up to me, introduced himself, which was like an aha moment for me because it's Mike Breen, and anybody who has followed the NBA from as young as you can remember, you get tied to Mike Breen. Like Mike Breen is the NBA, Kevin Harlan, Marv Albert. Those are like the three voices that you know of. And he introduced himself and said, can you at least give me a couple more years on ESPN? And it didn't click. And I was kind of just like, what are you talking about? And he said, I'd like to do a couple more NBA finals, but after that, you can have my job. And I was just like, oh crap. Like he heard about that. But he said it like tongue in cheek and was joking. He was super great about it and was super fun about it. And then we had like a 15-20 minute conversation. And now, you know, he got me connected through the team PR, and said, you know, any advice you need, anything you want me to look at, any, you know, conversations you want to have, if you just want to grab coffee when, you know, whenever I'm in town, whether it's with ESPN or with the Knicks, just let me know and we can do it. Sometimes you just have to, like, as cliche as it is, you just got to shoot your shot. And you just have to go up to that person and say, I want to be where you are one day. I would like you to, you know, can we have a conversation? Can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you coffee? And we have a conversation so that I can know how to get to where you are along my own path. To CJ's point, your path is not going to be their path. And whether you are the person getting the advice or giving the advice, you need to remember that and make sure that that is always front of mind, that your path is going to be different from everybody else's, but their advice and what they went through can still assist you in how you can get there in your own journey and your own way. So while my path is not going to be the exact same as Mike Breen's, I'm going to eventually be the voice of the NBA Finals. Y'all can record that, you can clip it. It's going to happen. I'm telling you this now. It's going to happen. And because of that, you can then put yourself in a position to figure out how you're going to navigate how to get to that point. So if you want to be, you know, the CEO of Pepsi, or you want to be the CEO of Nike, like, you have to put yourself in a position where you can figure out how you have to climb the ladder in order to get there. And the best way to do it is go to the sources. If you are right now, you know, lower level or entry level, and you want to get to, you know, VP or SVP or director of that department where you are, you need to go to that person and have that conversation, because they're going to be the ones that can give you the best advice on how to get there and how they got there. You can take that information and then figure out how you're going to navigate it. But for me, I've always been the type of person that if I have a question about something, if I just go to the source, because it takes out all the middle people. You getting 8 million different responses to one question. If you can go from point A to point B and get your answer, then you might as well do it. And at the end of the day, if they're too busy to have that conversation, then just shoot it to them in an email. Tell them why you want to have that conversation. Ask them the question in an email, or if you see them, if you happen to be walking down the hallway in the office one day when we are allowed to go back to the office and be closer than 6 feet, if you run into them, take that moment and shoot your shot. Like, it's that simple. You have to always be prepared to have those conversations, because you may run into them at Soul Cycle on a Sunday morning and be like, okay, I may never run into you at the office, so I'm going to take this opportunity. Get your cycling shoes off and just spark the conversation. Whatever, situation you may be in, if that's the opportunity that you have to have a face-to-face conversation, take it and run with it.
Yeah, Megan, I love that approach, especially with shooting your shot. I think for me, it's always been about like knowing what you have recently accomplished all the time. So I'm a big fan of writing out every month a monthly win summary. So on my computer, I've got a Word doc that goes up, and at the end of the month, I'm just writing down all the dope stuff that I have accomplished for the month. And I don't care who you are or what you do, you've done something dope for the month. So start tracking that. But to Mega's point, I think so many times there's opportunities that have been wasted when we do get a chance to get back in the office, or we have been in the office. You see that person that you want to connect with, they're, Mike Breen or whoever, and they acknowledge you, they see you, and they're like, hey, TJ, how's your day? And you're like, oh, it's great. And then they say, well, what are you working on? And you go, oh, the same old. And then they're like, okay. And then they keep it pushing. You have just lost, I get so hyped about this. You have just lost a wonderful opportunity to, I'm working on this, I'm working on that. Here's a stat from the last project that I just ran. That is an opportunity for you to just like toot your own horn. And then at the end of that, you should have like 3 things that you're like, I did this, this, and this. That's what I'm currently working on. Here's my forward plan. And then what can I help you with? What are you working on? And I mean, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, oh, well, blah, 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 right? And it's got probably nothing to do with you, but they're going to remember that when you approach them in the hallway, when they said hi to you, that you did. That is another way of shooting a shot. You have to be visible, you have to be memorable, you have to be out there. And then not to mention, that's a valuable piece of information. So I can't tell you how many times somebody has let it slip, some big project that they're working on that might have a dotted line into my department, that I am now able to circle back with them and say, oh, last time I met you in the hallway, you said you were working on this. Have you considered this perspective? Or can I offer this or that to you? So, definitely take the opportunity when you have them to talk about yourself and why you're good at what you're doing. The other thing that I would also recommend is to be personable. So that water cooler talk, the networking events, the meetings before and after the meetings, you have to be present and visible in those. Again, I'm a really big on data and statistics. And often people of color are passed up for promotions because people promote those people that they know. And so when CEOs are asked, well, why did you promote this man into this VP position? A lot of times you'll hear, well, I knew them. I knew CJ, so I knew what I was getting. And as people of color, we're so used to being insular. We're so used to talking to ourselves. And then when it's time to talk to people who don't look like us, and let's just face it, the sports and entertainment industry is full of the dominant culture. It's not us. So when it's time to talk to other people, it becomes hard. There are barriers. You might not want to tell people that you went to this concert or that cookout or whatever. You might want to keep that information to yourself because you're worried about how that's going to be perceived. I am here to tell you, bring all of that to the table. If you went, and I'm going to date myself just a little bit, but if you went to the Earth, Wind & Fire concert, if you went to the Beyonce concert, I went to the Beyonce concert with Jay-Z, and none of those kids knew any of Jay-Z's lyrics. And I was like, what are you doing here? That's a perspective. When somebody asks me what I did on the weekend, this is what I did. And did you know that nobody knew? Like, Jay-Z was kind of an afterthought in that concert. I felt for him. But like, you bring that, you see the smiles, people are gonna laugh. They're gonna remember, oh, well, Kiera likes, you know, Jay-Z a little bit more than she likes Beyonce or whatever. You know, so don't be afraid to be known, to put some of your personality out there and to help that cement for people why you might be next up, next in line, or have a relationship. The very last thing I'll say is that I had a friend at Octagon who we bonded over a mutual love of weird sayings and where they came from, the etymology of sayings. And so he was the SVP on one of the accounts that I hired for pretty regularly. And every week I would just shoot him a note that would be like, did you know where this saying came from? And here's the background for it. And he was just a really good champion for me. He was always pushing my career forward or saying things about me and behind closed doors. And it's literally because we bonded over something completely random. And that might not have happened if I hadn't put myself out there. So just to put Megan's point in a nice bow, you know, definitely be prepared to shoot your shot with some specifics, with some facts, and then, you know, add your own little flavor to it so that people feel that you're a known quantity.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump in shortly.
Go ahead, CJ.
I would say that, you know, I think, you know, speaking from the sense of, you know, someone that you could not be connected with, like do work or something like that, someone that you just might meet at a conference or some other event like that. You know, like I said before, try to find something that connects you to that person or something that you could use to kick off that conversation. Have that research done. The other thing just to note is people that are in sports like to talk about their careers in sports. Also, people in sports have gotten a ton of help to get to where they are today. So they feel the obligation to pay it back. So looking at it, and even somewhat looking at myself now, like I'm helping people, you know, do the same thing. Like I could see myself just a few years ago on conferences like this or events and like, you know, wanting to know what people are doing, wanting to know how to get involved, how to get into sports, how to change careers, things like that. And so we all, you know, feel that sort of debt, you know, gratitude that we want to pay back, you know, for people that helped us also along the way. And the last thing I would say is you're going to feel nervous, you know, and so something that I try to do is always try to have like stock questions just available. So like if I got too nervous, I could always just throw it out there. So one of the things that I always would want to know from people is like, what books are they reading? You know, if they're reading something, like I kind of want to be in the same level of them as to knowing what they're, you know, filling themselves up with, you know, knowledge wise. And once I know and have that information of what they're reading, it gives me another open opportunity to come back to them and talk to them about the book once I'm done. But I'll save that more for the final question. But yeah, but just have those stock questions available because I know at times it could be, you can really get nervous and like those questions will definitely help, you know, get things out there. But they want to talk to you and they want to help you. So don't be afraid.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Megan, Kiera, CJ, to your points, man, those are all impactful, especially when you want to open the envelope up just a little bit further in order to be detail oriented. So I appreciate you, all of you guys, for that. So got a question for you, and it's out of the Q&A, but this is something I really want to know from each and every one of you too, with the backgrounds that you all have and just the wealth of knowledge that you presented not only today, but I'm sure that you have and what you share in your entities where you work. What has been what challenges do you face in your industry? But I just really want to know what has been your biggest challenge, if I can kind of curve the question a little bit, because that's what we really want to get to know. Like, so what has been that big challenge that existed for you, and how did you knock that particular barrier down, or are you still fighting through that challenge? Anybody?
I mean, I think, Kiara mentioned this, and I mean, Megan as well. It's like, being your authentic self, and I think that is truly important. Who you are, how you feel. And John mentioned, the 3-foot house, if you're, 4 foot tall or whatever. And I mean, I think truthfully, like when I was spending my time at the Yankees, like I truly didn't enjoy it. And it was a quote unquote dream job for me. Like I mentioned earlier, like I wanted to work there. That was the dream, and I got there and like, it wasn't a dream. It was more of a nightmare. And it was really like fighting between two parts of myself. The one part that was the idealistic part of like, this is your dream, you're living your dream. But then the other part of like the reality and it not really, matching that up to one another. And even speaking to my dad about it and thinking about like leaving and not really sure. And he's like, my dad grew up big Yankees fan. Like, how could you ever leave this place? Like, that's just insane. You can't do that. And I just knew, to myself, it just wasn't the place for me. And, the irony of all of that to say is like all of these positions that I had, the internships through the Yankees, I was doing a lot of sponsorship and I was doing activation. So a lot of what I learned in school of marketing and activation side, I was doing that. And then the career now of like working at Monumental and working in their like sponsorship analytics, it like me seeing that there was an opening of like leaving a place that was not comfortable for me, another door opened. And that door would bridge the gap between my grad school degree, sports business and marketing, with my undergrad degree, math, into a corporate partnerships analytics role. And so looking for something that kind of was a space that wasn't for me, but keeping the door open, making space for something for me to succeed in, I think is important. Like if you have, all of these clothes in your house that you're never going to wear, that you got to get rid of them. Make space for new stuff in your life. Make space to open doors for things that you might need to give you those blessings, to give you those gifts. And so though I'm not going through that experience anymore, it was a very, very tough time dealing with like the idealistic side and the reality side, but it opened the door for me to find something that, I truly enjoy.
Ladies, industry challenges, your big challenge. Are you still overcoming it, or have you overcome it? What's been your biggest barrier so far? Talk to us.
I mean, I'm still in it. When you think about, being the only female play-by-play voice in the NBA umbrella, like I'm still in it. I'm still fighting to try and knock that down. I look at Marnie, who has done some Timberwolves games, Lisa, who's done some Chicago Bulls games, and there has never been a full-time female in the NBA. I'm literally the only full-time female play-by-play voice in the NBA or the G League. So I'm still in the struggle. I'm still in the fight. I'm still in the challenge. And to my earlier point, if that means that I've got to figure out and navigate how to break through this, door, this wall, this glass ceiling, I'm gonna figure it out, because I don't want the next generation of little girls to have to deal with this battle, to have to deal with this fight. I want to make it 25% easier for them, because the women I mentioned earlier, they made it 25% easier for me, and the women before them made it 25% easier for them. So if I can adjust it 25%, that means that the next generation only has to fight 25%, because we're doing the work now. So I'm still in the challenge. I'm still in the fight, but I'm a fighter. I don't back down. I know who that question came from. Shout out Ty. She knows me. She knows I'm a fighter. She knows I'm not going to back down. We have this conversation from time to time. And CJ and Danielle as well too. They know like I welcome the fight. Like I'm as I said earlier, I welcome those conversations with men who think they know more about basketball than I do. I played the game, I know the game. I'll talk circles around them any day. And it's fun when I do it because at the end of the day, I get the last laugh.
All right, Kiara, you want to chime in?
Yeah, biggest obstacle. I mean, I'll take it personal for a second. I think
Sure.
for me, biggest obstacle has just really been getting over the imposter syndrome. So, you know, when you are in corporate, any type of corporate function, I know a lot of times in sports entertainment, we like to think that we're not corporate. We are corporate. You're not going to see a lot of us, and it can be really isolating. It can be hard to navigate, and there's all of these different unwritten rules that it seems like your counterparts who are maybe from the dominant culture just understand. And you start to take knocks that they are not taking, and you worry, is it you? Are you not smart enough? Are you meant to be here? And I think when you don't see other people who are doing exactly what it is that you're doing, it becomes hard to just sort of keep the faith and continue to get up and fight the good fight, like Megan has said. So I think for me, the biggest obstacle that I have faced, and you know, I will say it still kind of comes up, is the idea that they're not smarter than you. They are not more prepared. They don't have a better education than you. They don't have a stronger viewpoint. They don't have some sort of random inside knowledge that you don't have. They just haven't had to question whether or not they actually belong in this space. And I think that if you look at it the right way, it can be something of a superpower. I know that John had mentioned it before when he was talking about emotional intelligence. And I have to say that feeling as if I don't belong in a room and then having to work my way through it has made me a lot more sensitive to other people who are in the room, has made me a lot more cognizant of when somebody is using all the time to speak or speaking over someone, or somebody's perspective isn't being considered. And it's also made me a fierce champion of the people who are coming up behind me, because I want them to not have to deal with some of the same obstacles that I have dealt with, and I want to smooth the path for them. So for me, it's really about just knowing that whatever room that you want to be in, you belong in that room, just by virtue of the fact that you want to be there, and that nothing is going to keep you out of it unless you choose to let it. So that's been a particular challenge for me, and I hope that whatever I do, that's not going to be a challenge for someone else.
Amazing. And through all of your responses, I hear that level of courageousness. I hear that level of confidence as well. And that's important that, you know, all of our attendees pick up on as well. So if they haven't, when you go inside these rooms or you're inside these meetings, be confident. And CJ used the word authentic. So know who you are, you know what you bring to the table. And each of you are a commodity. So don't ever think that you're not. Don't lessen yourself at all, because you got into that room by something that you possess. Let's keep going on with these questions, shall we? I see.
TJ,
How...
I'm gonna cut you off there a little bit. I think that's a great way to end it with how Kiara did. Let's move on to our final thoughts. It's getting late for everyone on a Monday night here.
Okay,
so.
Let's do it. So I got you, Danny. So my mama's watching this one, so I'm gonna keep it PG. But let's talk about the issue you should know. All right. So you can feel free to put the consonant in. Right. So the issue should know. So I'm gonna let everybody wrap it up as a final takeaway. I'm gonna let my ladies go first. I'm gonna just go right across my screen. So Megan, Kiara, and then we'll wrap up with CJ. But the issue that you should know, Miss Megan, you go first.
I mean, like, it's so simple, but like, know yourself. Know that you are valued and you carry value, because whether, like, especially for the ladies, because we, for whatever reason, when there's a job description, we feel like we need to check every single box on that list. But a male might see, like, have the exact same job description, be like, oh, I know how to use Word, I'm applying, I got this. But for women, for whatever reason, we feel like we need to hit it 100%. Just know that you are valued. And if I can leave it with a quote from the late, great Maya Angelou, because this one is one that I love very, very much. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, how you can still come out of it.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Megan, for sharing. Kiara, if you should know, talk to us. What you got to share?
For the next panel, I'm going to be an advocate of not letting Megan go first. Because how am I supposed to find, like, she came up with a Maya Angelou quote? Like, were we supposed to have quotes? She can't go first.
You didn't do your homework.
I didn't, clearly. Let's see, things I think you should know, or the thing, there is no one path. There isn't. I think sometimes you see these career progressions and people did this thing and that thing, and then they did the third thing, and you're like, oh, I got to do it like that. And if I'm not, where I'm supposed to be at 25, then I'm behind the 8 ball, and oh, I don't have this or I don't have that. There is no one path. So as long as you have, you don't even have to have a clear vision. As long as you just know that you want to keep moving forward in some way, shape, or form, the doors will open for you that are meant to open for you. And the ones that are not open are just not for you. I think, CJ, you had said it before, that some of these things could potentially be a blessing. Your rejections are blessings. And I think that for me, it's always been about just trying lots of different things and not necessarily saying that I have to be one particular thing or one particular way, because all of those experiences will shape you. And again, to CJ, to your point, you're talking about folding chairs. As a grad student, I didn't graduate college until I was 27. And I took my first internship. My first internship were with, was at sales at Indeed.com. I was scared to death. And all of the other interns were like 20, 21. And here I was, the whole 27 and married. And like, I am the old lady out of this crew. I am so behind. And if I think about how my career has just like galloped to catch up to me in ways that I had never anticipated, just because I put myself out there and didn't subscribe to one particular path. I would have to say that the Kiara that graduated college in 2012 is very, very impressed by the Kiara from 2020. So definitely do not box yourself into one particular way or path or destination. It's all good. Go wherever your heart takes you.
Thank you, Kiara, so much. CJ, the issue should know, my guy, what we talking about?
I think, this is a big thing that I've been seeing in the industry, and I really feel strongly against people's way of trying to become connected to someone. I mean, I'm sure after this, and probably already has happened now, people have probably sent us all LinkedIn connections, right? And what you should know is a LinkedIn connection means nothing. What truly means something, or just someone, speaking to someone once means nothing. Or even if Megan wrote that one guy back or tweeted that guy, that means nothing. What means something overall is if we know you, or if someone else knows you, right? Like, so if you're looking for a job and you're just randomly connected to me from Monumental, like when the job is up and there's, recommendations and different things going out, they're going to be like, do you know X person? Because I see you're connected to them. And if I can't remember you, or if we never had a number of conversations or things like that, it doesn't mean anything if we're connected on LinkedIn. So I always look at it as sort of like the Barack Obama recommendation, right? Like Joe Biden knows Barack Obama, and Barack Obama is out there campaigning for him. Like they know each other. So look at everybody that you want to meet as you want that person to know you. So not only is it the first conversation, you could connect, you send an email, you talk to this person once, it's the follow-up and the follow-up and the follow-up. So the one thing I mentioned earlier was like, hey, what books are you reading? All right, that's the first conversation. You might ask a few other questions, whatever. You come back, you follow up. Hey, I read that book. That book was great. I thought about this, I thought about that. You have a reason to get back to talk to that person. When you're in school, talking about what classes you're taking. Hey, this semester is starting up, you know, I guess right now it's November, semester is about to end soon, you know. Hey, my semester ended. Here's the classes that I took. Here are my grades. Next semester, I'm gonna be taking this, that, and the third. Okay, send that email. A couple months go by. Hey, I'm looking at these internships, blah, blah, blah. So each time, continuing those conversations, continuing to have times, you know, when normal times you could go get coffee with one another, or just, you know, Zoom calls. That's easy to do. Or like continue having those conversations for the person to know who you are and really become, you know, that advocate for you, that sponsor for you, because once they know who you are and they're invested in your career, then like Kiara was mentioning before, they're out there putting your names in rooms that you're not even in yet. And so the only way that they're going to do that is if they know you. So look at it as, like I said, the Barack Obama sort of approach. Like the person must know you. They must know you to be out there to advocate for you. And one call or one just being connected on LinkedIn means nothing. It means something if they really know who you are. So, you know, continue to do that and, you know, dive deep in your approach to connect with people.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, listen, thank you all so much for being a part of this amazing panel tonight. We know John had to go, but to Miss Megan, Kiara, my Uptown brother, and my man CJ, thank y'all so much. Thank you all to the attendees. Thank you, Danielle, for allowing me to be the host. Hope you guys had a great night. I'm gonna kick it back to the Connect CEO and co-founder, Miss Danielle White. What's up, Danny?
Oh man, thank you all. I took so many gems away from this chat from all of you guys. Yeah, I'm still learning. I'm, you know, what is your Beyonce fan? I think from John, I will keep with me forever. But then once again, just echoing, thank you, TJ, for moderating tonight. That was great. You know, you set the tone. I loved it. Everything. Thank you to our guests, our hosts, everything. Stay tuned for our next event, January 13th. It's going to be a great one. So thank you guys for coming out and have a great night.
Thank you.